Davenport native and American Pickers star Frank Fritz has died.
It breaks my heart to learn what killed Frank Fritz. Famous TV actor and antiques expert Frank Fritz came into this world in the historic and culturally rich city of Davenport, Iowa on October 11, 1965. The cultural background of Davenport, which is situated along the Mississippi River, is one of a kind, as the town's residents have preserved a wealth of relics and anecdotes from bygone eras. Frank was inspired to pursue a profession in history since he grew up in this Midwestern town with a community that was strongly anchored in its past. A young Frank found the ideal setting to investigate the artifacts of bygone times in this town's eclectic mix of historic structures, antique shops, and community festivals. He would aimlessly roam the streets, captivated by the artifacts that belonged to bygone eras and fueled by an insatiable need for knowledge about the tales contained inside them. The events of his formative years in Davenport inspired Frank to pursue a career in antiques and to use his platforms for historical preservation and education. Growing up, Frank Fritz was part of a tight-knit middle-class family. He owes a great deal of his strength, resilience, and sense of community to his parents, who were role models for him in these areas. From his humble upbringing in a family that valued honesty and hard work above all else, Frank learned early on the value of standing up for what you believe in and keeping your head down, no matter how successful you became. Growing up, Frank was encouraged by his caring parents to follow his heart and do what made him happy. Their unwavering commitment to their profession inspired him, and their encouragement helped him believe in himself. Both Frank's personal life and his professional career were built around the principles instilled in him by his parents: the importance of connections, honesty, and perseverance. The fortitude and perseverance to face adversity and find his way down the winding road of his future profession were gifts from Frank's solid upbringing. Frank Fritz's insatiable appetite for history and artifacts began from an early age. Even as a young boy, he was captivated by the weathered surfaces of coins, the weathered patina of antique toys, and the elaborate patterns seen in treasured family treasures that had been passed down through many generations. Frank found it fascinating that these artifacts served as links to bygone eras and places, with each one bearing witness to a different tale of a long-gone individual or group. He used to lose track of time poring over antiques and oddities, trying to piece together their stories and the events leading up to their current state of ownership. My interest in discovering the backstories of commonplace objects developed from a childish curiosity and blossomed into a lifelong fascination. Because of his perceptiveness and careful observation, Frank was able to evaluate things for more than their monetary value, taking into account their emotional and historical significance. While enrolled at Davenport High School, Frank's interests and abilities started to take form. Along with his stellar academic record, he was well known for being an approachable, kind soul who worked tirelessly to achieve his goals. Both Frank's classmates and instructors thought highly of him. His friendly personality and dogged pursuit of excellence allowed him to form great connections with people in and out of the classroom. Something that had started out as a pastime for Frank as a kid may turn into a profession once he entered high school, and his love for antiques only became stronger. Frank, seeing his fascination as more than just a phase, started thinking about how he might incorporate his passion for collecting into his future plans. He felt a renewed sense of purpose and excitement at the prospect of making a living off of his love of vintage items. Frank Fritz was never one to sit on his hands while attending Davenport High School. He actively sought for opportunities to make a difference. The pursuit of practical experience in the field of antiquities was something he pursued with vigor. He started making regular trips to the neighborhood antique stores, where he would lose whole days to perusing the wares. Frank often found himself at local auctions where he watched as experienced collectors skillfully bid on rare objects. In an effort to pick their brains on the ins and outs of valuing antiques, he would initiate talks with dealers. The knowledge that Frank gained from these conversations with seasoned dealers and collectors was priceless. It was information that he couldn't have gotten from any textbook. Beyond his contacts with others, his passion for antiques led him to study much on the topic, delving into topics such as the history of certain periods and the artistry involved in making the things he cherished. Frank Fritz received his high school graduation in 1984 after graduating from Davenport High School. He felt prepared to go farther into the antiques world on his next adventure. As Frank embarked on his journey to establish his reputation in the world of collecting, his graduation ceremony signaled the start of a new chapter, one that would be packed with both chances and obstacles. The self-assurance to follow his passions came from his solid academic background and the practical wisdom he had acquired from his encounters with antique merchants and collectors. He had no idea that the love of antiques that he had developed since he was a young man would lead to his meteoric rise to stardom on a global scale. From perusing local stores to visiting auctions, Frank's early years in Davenport laid the groundwork for his future profession, enabling him to forge a distinct niche in the antiquities industry. Frank Fritz's work ethic was shaped in large part by his family's construction company, but his passion for antiques was the driving force in his life. Frank learned the value of a good work ethic, commitment, and persistence from an early age while helping out around the family construction business. Frank learned discipline and the reward of seeing a job through to completion via the physically hard nature of construction labor. Working with his hands and making a difference in the family company gave him a great feeling of responsibility and satisfaction in his job, even if construction wasn't his ultimate love. The tenacity and resolve that Frank would need to thrive in the cutthroat antiques industry were forged throughout this formative encounter. His early experiences in construction gave him the skills and work ethic that were crucial in his subsequent endeavors, even if his heart belonged to another universe. His interest in collecting and antiques only became stronger as Frank aged. The stories such artifacts held, the tales of bygone eras, and the people and events they represented captivated him. Frank's love in antiquities stemmed from their cultural and historical importance rather than their monetary worth. He enjoyed the chance to preserve these artifacts for future generations, since each one he found represented a link between the past and the present. Frank devoted himself to studying as much as he could about antiques after what had been a fleeting curiosity blossomed into an all-consuming passion. In his relentless pursuit of becoming an authority in the industry, he poured many hours into study, went to seminars, and made connections with other collectors. He became one of the most revered individuals in the antiquities industry as a result of his insatiable appetite for learning and his profound reverence for the history contained in every object he met. Eventually, Frank Fritz's dedication to the antiquities industry paid off, and he became a respected expert in the field. Television chances arose as a result of his charisma and knowledge, allowing him to share his love of antiques with viewers all over the world. He went from being a little kid in Davenport, Iowa, who liked to collect antiques and coins, to being a famous TV personality and expert in the field. His story exemplifies the power of pursuing one's dreams. A lifelong interest in history and antiques blossomed into a prosperous profession because to his perseverance and passion for preserving the past, which has inspired many others. With his wealth of antiquities expertise and an entrepreneurial fire in him, Frank Fritz took a huge risk in the early 1990s by opening his own antique business. This change was the result of years of dedicated work and dedication to the industry, making it more than just a corporate endeavor. The new venture was founded on Frank's lifelong passion for collecting distinctive and uncommon artifacts, as well as his acute awareness of the historical importance of antiques. He was able to satisfy his insatiable need for antiquity and meet like-minded individuals when he opened his business, providing a platform for him to talk about the tales and artistry that went into making antiques. People from all walks of life, including collectors, historians, and curious onlookers, flocked to his antique business. It served as more than simply an antique store. It brought together people who shared Frank's passion for historical preservation. The store became a haven for those in search of historical relics and information about the past. With an eye for quality and uniqueness, Frank painstakingly assembled an eclectic collection that included everything from old signage to rare furniture. He was rather proud of the fact that he had researched each item by himself, giving them all genuine histories and confirming their provenance. His store stood out from the crowd of others that sold mass-produced, less historically important things because of his dedication to truth and historical purity. Frank was able to refine his abilities as an archivist and storyteller via this endeavor. Customers could relate to his work on a very intimate level because of his talent for describing the item's emotional and historical significance. With passion and respect, he sold more than simply goods. He sold history. Visitors to his store could feel the tales and artistry in every relic because of how carefully he exhibited them. Not only did Frank's knack for bringing the past to life captivate customers, but so did the objects for sale. His store became into a resource for antiques education as time went on. He gained a reputation for offering great quality and competence in the industry because to his devotion to maintaining each item, and his firm flourished in both scale and clients. People from all over the world began to take notice of Frank as his reputation for honesty and competence grew and his knowledge expanded. Folks from all over the nation who dealt in antiques heard about his business and his knowledge of the subject. His exceptional talent for discovering valuable items and determining their actual worth distinguishes him from others in the antique industry. As the years went by, Frank's reputation as an authority on antiques and a source of unmatched knowledge garnered him a legion of dedicated followers who were ready to pick his brain. His expertise in discovering and preserving history via his findings grew increasingly well known, which in turn piqued the curiosity of the media. Conferences, antique fairs, and seminars were opportunities for Frank to impart his expertise as he became increasingly well known in the antique collecting field. His effortless charm and extensive knowledge made him an enthralling public speaker. He had a special talent for illuminating and entertaining both novice and expert antique collectors with even the most specialized facets of the hobby. Every time he spoke, people were captivated by his enthusiasm. As a leading expert in the subject, Frank's reputation was further cemented by his contributions to periodicals devoted to the study and conservation of antiquities. From the value of authenticity to the excitement of the quest, he covered it all in his articles, which were popular with collectors old and young. A turning point in Frank's business occurred when he teamed up with Mike Wolfe, a longtime friend and fellow antiques fan. Their lives were turned upside down when they decided to co-host the hit reality program American Pickers. After debuting on the History Channel in January 2010, the program changed the game. Viewers identified with the show's concept, which followed protagonists Frank and Mike as they traversed the country in quest of priceless relics and long-lost artifacts. Frank and Mike were a dynamic team who attracted audiences week after week with their experience, financial savvy, and mutual quest for exploration. Millions of people tuned into American Pickers because they were enthralled by the duo's exploits as they sought for treasures in forgotten places like barns, basements, attics, and fields. The historical context of the artifacts and the lives of the collectors who gathered them were as important as the artifacts themselves in this exhibition. Frank was well liked by viewers because of his genuine excitement and his lightning-fast ability to assess an object's value. The thrill of the treasure hunt piqued the curiosity of many who had previously had little interest in antiques, thanks to his extensive knowledge and magnetic personality. Frank and Mike encountered many interesting people who had devoted their lives to collecting as they traveled the nation. These interactions brought depth to the program by revealing interesting collections and the stories of individuals who, like Frank, worked tirelessly to preserve the past. Frank was introduced to a worldwide audience and propelled to new heights of stardom by the show's success. Frank and Mike's relationship was just as captivating to viewers as the jewels they unearthed. the thrill of discovery was only one component. As Frank's reputation grew, he became a popular guest on many television programs and podcasts, further establishing his status as an influential player in the antique industry. Frank Fritz went from being an obscure antique merchant to a cultural icon because to American pickers, which elevated the hobby to the national consciousness. His meteoric rise from the humble beginnings of an antique business to his current status as a household name is evidence of his dedication, skill, and enthusiasm for collecting and conserving artifacts from the past. Frank Fritz's struggle with Crohn's disease was one of many obstacles he faced throughout his life. Severe stomach discomfort, diarrhea, exhaustion, weight loss, and starvation are symptoms of Crohn's disease, a chronic inflammatory bowel illness. This autoimmune illness brought Frank a world of pain, both physically and emotionally. At an early age, he received the devastating diagnosis of Crohn's disease, which had a significant influence on his health and well-being. When you live with Crohn's disease, you have to constantly juggle different aspects of your life since the illness may suddenly flare up and cause crippling symptoms that make even the simplest tasks difficult. In spite of everything, Frank refused to let his illness define or restrict him. Instead, he decided to face his diagnosis directly. He took it upon himself to raise awareness about Crohn's illness. Frank played a role in reducing the social stigma that surrounds chronic illness by being transparent about his personal struggles with the disease. Many others who were also dealing with the sickness found comfort in his candor, and he used his position on American Pickers to bring attention to the hardships endured by those who suffer from long-term health issues. Frank's candor about his condition has done double duty. It has inspired his fans to get treatment, and it has increased public awareness and compassion for others struggling with mental illness. Frank, like many others suffering with Crohn's disease, had to deal with the unpredictability of his condition, which sometimes interfered with his career. Managing a chronic disease may have been more challenging for the cast and crew of American Pickers due to the filming schedule, which included long hours of travel and strenuous physical exercise. Frank had to take time away from shooting to tend to his health as it started to deteriorate. Many viewers felt his absence and longed for his charisma, humor, and ability to spot great deals with co-host Mike Wolfe. The chemistry between the two hosts was the show's foundation, so when Frank took a leave of absence from the series, it was like seeing a weight was lifted off his shoulders. But his supporters were sympathetic, mostly because he was honest about his struggles with health. The audience was able to relate to his struggles with Crohn's illness because he was forthright about them. They rallied around him and felt sorry for him. Frank had to make the tough choice to step away from American Pickers for a while in 2020 to deal with his continuing health issues. Since Frank had been a mainstay for more than 10 years and played a crucial part in the show's success, the choice was not taken lightly. Nevertheless, Frank understood the need of taking a break to focus on his health when the toll of Crohn's disease, back surgery, and weight loss became too great. This choice highlighted the need of taking care of one's emotional and physical health, particularly while dealing with a long-term disease. Fans and viewers of the program took note of Frank's decision to step away from the show as a reminder to prioritize self-care and to make tough decisions in order to maintain good health, even if it means giving up a cherished job. With the passing of 2020 and the arrival of 2021, viewers anxiously awaited word on whether or not Frank would be returning to American Pickers. Unfortunately, it became apparent that his absence would last longer than expected. It was finally announced that Frank would not be returning to the program after his absence continued into the new year. Frank and Mike Wolfe's cooperation had grown to be a major selling point for the program, so this news was shocking. Working as a team, they had traversed the United States in search of long-lost relics and their histories. Fans were worried about Frank's well-being and the show's survival after his departure, since it had depended on the rapport and humor between its two lead hosts. The announcement that Frank Fritz was leaving American Pickers for good was made public in July 2021. For the show's loyal fan base, This was a watershed moment that signaled the beginning of a new chapter. Fans loved Frank because of his magnetic personality, excellent judgment, and kind demeanor. Both viewers and his longtime co-host Mike Wolfe will miss him when he went. Even though the performance went on without Frank, many fans were saddened at the news and voiced their grief. Mike Wolfe openly said that Frank will continue to contribute to the show's history even after he left, recognizing the significance of Frank's leaving. The unfortunate truth is that Frank's health problems only became worse throughout the years that followed. The news that Frank Fritz had a stroke in 2024 cast a gloomy shadow on his predicament. Brain damage after a stroke may be catastrophic, and it's not uncommon for survivors to have ongoing health challenges. Having cerebral vascular disease, a disorder that impacts blood flow to the brain, led to Frank's stroke, which had devastating effects on his health. The precariousness of life and the need of self-care were brought home even more starkly by this health scare, which is particularly important for those coping with chronic diseases such as Crohn's. As soon as word got out about Frank's stroke, his many fans came together to console him and express their best wishes for a speedy recovery. Frank Fritz's untimely death at 60 years of age occurred in September 2024, bringing much sadness. His death was attributed to complications stemming from the stroke he had previously. As the principal cause of death was listed as late sequelae of cerebral infarction on the death certificate, it is clear that the stroke had left permanent damage to his brain. More so, Frank allegedly had aortic stenosis, a cardiac ailment that limits blood flow to the body. During his latter years, Frank's health was severely compromised due to this chronic disease and the stroke's after effects. Longtime friend and former co-host Mike Wolfe announced Frank's loss and expressed his sadness on social media. Mike's message was an expression of his profound grief at the death of a person who had played a significant role in his life, both professionally and personally. As longtime co-hosts of American Pickers, Mike and Frank had many experiences together. Their relationship had its ups and downs, but Mike's homage to Frank served as a reminder of the friendship they had shared. After thinking back on all the fun and laughter that Frank had brought to their lives, fans of the program were sad to hear of his departure. With his passing, Frank Fritz closed a chapter in reality television's annals and left behind an inspiring legacy of perseverance, fortitude, and support for others coping with long-term health conditions. His candidness with his health issues, especially his fight with Crohn's disease, served to bring attention to the truths of dealing with such disorders. Frank's story is an inspiration to individuals who are dealing with health issues because of his determination to keep going, even when things became tough. The influence that Frank Fritz had on television and on the lives of his fans will last long after he has passed away.